I'd like to call to order the Village of Lake Bluff Sustainability and Community Enhancement Ad Hoc Committee regular meeting for Tuesday, October 18th, 2022. Can I get a roll call, please?
Certainly. Member Barrett is absent. Member Cole.
Here.
Member Hance.
Here.
Member Twitchell.
Here.
Co-Chair Renner.
Here.
And Member Riker is absent, but you have a quorum.
Okay, great. First up is a consideration of the August 15th, 2022 regular meeting minutes. I had one minor comment. It's Renner with one N.
Apologies for that drafting error.
Twitchell with no T in the middle, page 2.
Again, apologies for those typographical errors.
Any other comments? Okay, hearing none. Do I need a motion on that?
You do.
Can I get a voice vote?
You need a
So you need a
motion.
Motion, can I
So
get a motion to
moved.
approve? Sorry.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Roll call.
You can just do this by
Voice,
voice.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, passed. Next up is non-agenda items and visitor public comment. The chair will allocate 15 minutes during this time for individuals who would like the opportunity to address the SEC on any matter not listed on the agenda. I believe we have someone here. Two people. If you could come up to the microphone, give your name and address, and let us know what you'd like to discuss.
And we don't have to be sworn in.
No.
I'll stay. So thanks for your time tonight. I'm here to give an update of the growing native community gardeners in town. Just a brief.
Can you tell us who you are and where you live?
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. My name's Lisa Schwartz, and I am a resident of Knollwood.
Do we need an address, or that doesn't matter?
It's fine.
Okay. I don't know. Just trying to make sure the procedure is right.
Thank you. So in the spring of 2021, Sue Raymore put a Facebook post out wanting to see if anybody was interested in doing a book club on nature's best hope. She got 75 responses from one single post, and when we were finally able to meet in person, we had about 60 people come to talk about this book. And the premise of Professor Talamy's book is that our wildlife populations have drastically declined in the last few decades, one of the major reasons being because our native plants that they rely on are disappearing. And his approach is a grassroots conservation approach. Although we have great things like open lands and forest preserve and state parks and national parks that are doing a great job, the fact is that most land in the United States is privately owned. And so his approach is to have private individuals plant natives on their property. And if we get enough people doing that, we develop conservation corridors, which are wildlife habitats, and we can really increase native populations and bring back the biodiversity and wildlife that are very much threatened. So we got really excited about this concept, and everybody in the book club said, what can we do, besides planting on our own property? And we thought we would like to start a native garden, a demo garden, that people in the village could look at and say, hey, I could do this in my home too, and we could spread the word. So we approached both the village and the park district. They were both very supportive. And we were able to get a little bit of land at Artesian Park next to the tennis courts. Just about a year ago, John Baylor and Noah Mark came over, helped us figure out the footprint, took up the sod. Before this first snowfall last year, we seeded the area with some native plants, and then a group of us started some native seeds and grew the plugs over the winter. In the spring, we got a bunch of volunteers to come and plant and nurture these plants. And then we got a good group of volunteers to tend and water and weed this garden. We thought we'd get a few blooms the first year. It has exceeded our expectation. It's beautiful. If you haven't seen it, I encourage you to go over and check it out. And I wanted to show you what it looks like now. I put together a little collage. One of the pictures is when it was just bare ground, and the rest where I took in 5 minutes with an old iPhone, and you can see some of the wildlife that has come through this. So we've gotten a lot of support from volunteers. We've gotten a lot of anybody that's walked by and we've told about, really enthusiastic about this. And I think it's been a real success. And I'm thankful for the support that the village and the rest of the community has given us. Any questions?
It looks great.
Have you walked over to see it?
Indeed, yes.
I like that you can see it very visibly when you're on Sheridan Road at 176. You look, and I think it looks fantastic.
And
We're
it's
really
pretty
happy.
big. It's, you know,
Yes.
when I thought about demonstration, I thought it would be smaller. It's big. It looks really lovely.
Yeah, and like I said, I thought we'd get a few blooms the first year. It looks fantastic.
looks
We're really
great.
excited to see how it looks. Yes.
You know, I do have a question. About how many different plants do you think are in this?
Let's see. I have a list. Let's see, but they're not listed here. Say probably 50 to 60 different plants. Native sedges, native asters, coneflowers, goldenrods, golden Alexander, rattlesnake master. We have a really good diversity, and they were all chosen for their value as food and habitat for wildlife. So it's buzzing.
If anybody wants, I mean, if that plant list is helpful, that could be shared, I think.
Absolutely.
Because part of the demo garden idea was, we didn't grow any real tall ones, right? We thought that would be scary. And then we wanted ones that we knew would thrive. We kind of had experience with, we didn't want any, prima donnas that needed any special care.
Yes.
So it's kind of a nice beginner garden plant list in some ways.
Yeah, we've had a number of initiatives here in the SEC. We've got a master plan for 176 Rockland. We have a landscape playbook, which helps guide future projects within the village in terms of plants to use. We have, it didn't go this year, but we have our designs, our landscape designs for the bike path along Sheridan, right? We had a lot of discussion about natives, and I was informed about natives versus nativars, and we updated that and came up with some really great ideas. So, and then we have the gardens over at Washington, right? So it's just so many great things going on, and I feel like we need to make sure we keep on top and unify all that information and kind of keep a database going for people to use.
Is there any information online about it?
About this particular garden?
Yeah, where you could include the plant list and a little history or, that kind
See,
of thing?
we've been wondering where that might go, and we've talked about, how can we get little updates on what we're doing out there. That's why we're kind of standing here to kind of tell you guys what we're doing.
We
But
have
we
had a
don't-
table at the farmer's market to share the info, but online, we really
Yeah, it
haven't
would be
had a
lovely
presence.
to have
Yeah.
some, a page on some website someplace.
One of the things that we're doing too with our high school board member, or committee member, is we're planning to do an educational and have the people from the high school do YouTube videos.
Great idea.
And so that would be an excellent, I think, opportunity to send them over in the spring or summer to your plot with you, do an interview, do a discussion of it, and then that can be shared as part of the village's SEC YouTube information.
And getting youth involved is
Yes.
really what we need to do as well, so they can continue. So that's a great idea.
You mentioned Sue Raymar. Are you connected with Lake Bluff Open Lands in any way, shape, or form?
As a volunteer at times, but
I mean,
not,
is the
I'm not a
garden-
member.
Is the garden designated an open lands project in any way?
No,
shape?
although we have a lot of open lands volunteers working on it, as well as a lot of garden club members. We have, people that are
Sure.
interested in this, so it's sort of a collaborative effort between a lot of
I
groups.
mean, I wonder if there are plenty of areas within Lake Bluff that are sort of overgrown with invasive species, and I wonder if your group might be interested in trying to identify maybe other areas that we could use some
Well,
some
when-
tender loving care, so to speak.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, when we were first looking at it between the village and the park district, there were a number of sites that were identified. So we're hoping this is the first of many gardens, because they do, because they're natives, after they're established, they're very easy to tend. They don't require a lot of external inputs. So
I think this committee would be open to proposals of
Right.
green
I would
spaces.
encourage you to go to the village website and look for the landscape playbook.
landscape
Because
playbook, thank
as
you.
we do projects like this, it would be nice to kind of follow a general guideline. It's not mandatory, it's not, you know, a
You
regulation.
aware of that?
Yes.
Okay.
Let
Well,
me
or just
segue.
talk about
That's a
how
good
they
segue.
dovetail.
You know what, I have one more question for you. About how many volunteers do you think have worked on this garden?
I'd say at least 30. Worked
That's
on it throughout. And, you know, we have about 90 people on our email list, which we tell them all the time, if you don't want to be on this list, let us know. So it's been steady at about 90. But in terms of coming to do the work, would you say about 30 that?
Yeah, probably. That would be a good estimate. I mean, so, okay, Mickey Collins, 217 East Scranton, get that out of the way. But Lisa's not tooting her own horn here, but she actually organized this phenomenal watering schedule where she had teams A through, was it D or did
Yeah,
it go
4
past?
teams.
4 teams of at least 4 on each team. And then, so we each got we kept rotating and we'd have our week and I think that garden was watered almost every other day. And we kind of think that's why it was just so phenomenally successful, because I've been growing natives for over 12 years and I was sure we weren't gonna see much until the 2nd or 3rd year, and this thing just went crazy, so. Anyway, this is a segue into my topic, which is trees. Glenn could have predicted. But I thought, I had just brought this along just in case. For a couple of years, I've been advocating with the village to get some more trees planted. We've lost a lot of our tree canopy, you know, emerald ash borer, and just trees getting older and being cut down. And, you know, we need to up the quantity of trees we're planting each year. And when I started it, I made a native tree list of appropriate trees for Lake Bluff. And I'll just send this around, because in the footnotes, one of my sources was the landscape playbook. So
Nice.
it is, some people are using it as a resource.
Good to hear.
Yeah, because we also want that playbook to not be static, you know, to evolve and to grow as we
Yeah.
learn things about our community, and also, you know, the climate is variable these days, and
Yep.
maybe different things work better
Yeah.
than they used to, so.
Yeah, and actually, when I was doing my tree list, these are on the list. The first part is all natives to Lake County, very specific to us. But if our climate warms, you know, we might be starting to plant some species that are, you know, adapted to some areas a little bit south of us. And I think that's better than ginkgos or London plane trees or things like that. You know, if we're gonna do something that's not a pure native for our area, at least it should be kind of,
Well, because the insects are what associated will be moving with them. So,
yeah, exactly.
So if someone like the garden club or Lake Bluff Open Lands or somebody posted like a little story about the demonstration garden and shared the list, then couldn't you guys, you know, link to that or promote that so that that story goes out? Or could it be a little subject in a future newsletter?
Yeah, we can certainly do that. I mean, that's a lot of, I think, I hope something we've seen this year is we've managed to really be, the last couple of years, we've tried to be more structured about opening that up to community groups. This last year, I think we've been more structured about opening that up to our special events, especially, and all these outside partners we're working with. So we're trying to keep building out the utility of that tool, and then also use that to branch a little more into social media, branch a little more into our website. I think
Yeah,
that
it seems like a
makes a lot of sense.
perfect thing to talk about the demonstration garden on our public property and the list or whatever. Or if you know, do you want to volunteer or get involved, you know, you could recruit more people.
yeah.
And who to contact about it. You know, because this speaks directly to natural spaces, item 4 in our sustainability plan. That's another reason why it's exciting that Lisa and Mickey are coming here to talk to us about it.
Yeah.
Hey, Mickey, I have a question for you. Native Trees of Lake Bluff, is there any initiative going on right now where these trees are being planted or there's a plan for them to be planted?
Well, okay, that's my topic. So a subset of the Growing Native group is a group of tree enthusiasts. We're about a dozen. So what we did, actually it's kind of late August, is we scheduled a meeting with Drew and Jake Turlap, head of Public Works, and Maddie, who's going to eventually become our forester. And Lisa was there, we had an outdoor meeting. It was just, we were all on the same page. We were encouraging the village to plant more native trees. I've shared this list with the village. Plant more native trees, plant more trees, and, they talked to us about the challenges of, trying to work with all these different property owners and getting trees in front of their houses, and we can see it is a challenge. But anyway, we said we'd help. And about a week after that meeting, I got a call from Drew, and he said, we've bought 75 native trees from Possibility Place, the small ones, but he said, can you guys find homes for 50 of them? And the next day, I was leaving on vacation for 3 weeks, so it all just kind of fell in Sue Raymer's lap instead of mine. I'd abandoned her, but she and this group did a phenomenal job, and they once again had a table at the farmer's market, and some children made signs, and the Public Works brought over a couple trees to show them, and close to 40 of the 50 were handed out that way. And then afterwards, some of us kind of went around to neighbors, to friends, and we got the final 10 into places. And because they were small, there are many advantages, because you could just dig a little hole and plunk the tree in, and you don't have to have any big equipment. One person can do it. They're inexpensive. Some people that I contacted just wanted a bigger tree, though. But so as much as we argue about how vigorous these little trees are, and they grow fast, and they don't have that shock phase of a couple years that, bald and burlap tree is just gonna sit there and not really grow for a couple years. And maybe sometimes they just never reestablish a good root system. They just are not as long-lived as a little tree will be when it grows. Like the oaks we have around here that are a couple hundred years old, they grew from little seedlings, So that's how you really get a vigorous tree. So you can maybe see them around in the parkways. And another initiative, Ann Anderson is on the history board, and she made a presentation to them that the Lake Bluff History Museum should start a legacy tree program to kind of record trees when they're planted. Oh, sorry, I could have come to get that, not made you walk. So the board approved it. And not much has been done yet, but that's coming. So there'll be some kind of program done. One of our ideas was that, and Paul Lemieux did this. He planted his little tree with his granddaughter, Hannah, and then had somebody take a picture of them, and little Hannah's standing next to the little tree. And then if the History Museum keeps a record like that, decades from now,
Oh, that's such a cute idea.
yeah,
That's-
it'll be a legacy tree. And so I know so many people that just, they're attached to some tree they planted in their childhood, and it's so we're hoping to get that going. I also heard that Majestic Oaks, which is in Spring Grove, they don't sell to the public, but they sell to municipalities, park districts, things like that. And they grow oaks for different people. They're growing them for, I guess, for either Lake Forest or Lake Forest Open Lands, one of the two. They're growing some oaks for them. So I contacted them, and they said, well, you give us the acorns. We grow little trees. It takes 2 years to 4 years, and then you get first dibs. You don't have to buy them, but you get first dibs when they go up for sale. So Lisa and other members of this group, this was a couple weeks ago when all the acorns were just raining down on us. So we just all ran out and gathered up the acorns, and we did the test. You put them in water, see if they float, right? So anyway, we tested them, and I dropped them off. So that's something I hope we can plan for like a couple years from now, that we'll be able to buy and this gets more genetic diversity and very local genetic diversity into our trees, rather than, Possibility Place is great, but it is quite far south of Chicago, and it's really not, it's not Lake County, it's not our area, so that's something to wait for. And then one final thing, Sue isn't here to talk about it. It's a Open Lands Board meeting tonight, so she can't tell you about this, but there was a meeting 2 weeks ago about Ravine Park. And Open Lands acts as a steward, it's a park district park, but it's not, the park district doesn't have the expertise to maintain the native ecosystem in there. So what's been happening is that invasive Norway maples have been kind of taking over. And the Norway maples, they're from Norway. They're not like our maples at all. And they have such dense shade that what they do is make it almost impossible for the undergrowth in the understory to grow under them. And they're starting to get a lot of erosion that's going to be tragic for Ravine Park. So Open Lands is trying, it's going to be a big effort to actually turn it around and clear out those Norway maples. But they did a little bit. They took down some trees, which aroused some opposition with neighbors that I think they're all on Sylvan. It was a small group, but some neighbors on Sylvan that didn't like the fact that trees that they're used to looking at were coming down. So then they were very concerned. So there was a meeting held, and I know, Marietta, you were there. I don't know if anyone else attended, but it got a little heated at times. But the Open Lands explained why they want to do it. The neighbors were upset that sometimes, if a tree was cut down, it just laid there, it wasn't cleared away. And Open Lands explained their labor issues, that it's just volunteer labor, and it's hard to sometimes, get everything done in a rapid way. So anyway, at the end of it, I think the conclusion was much better communication needs to be done, and everybody agreed to that. And they were going to set up an email exchange, and they can let everybody know when trees are coming down and why they're coming down, and try to not get everybody in a panic when that's happening, because ultimately it will be a good thing. I don't know, Marietta, you were there. Do you want to add anything to that?
I do. I think that it was heated at times, but that is just coming from passion about creating and restoring this beautiful ravine. And I think it was the ravine in Lake Bluff that actually founded the Lake Bluff Park District. So I think it's something a sustainability committee can keep an eye on. Because again, it's in that item 4 of natural spaces. That's a huge natural space in Lake Bluff. And I think that everybody felt grateful for Lake Bluff Open Lands volunteering, and as you said, better communication. But there were about, I don't know, maybe 30, 35 people there. And that's very telling.
Yeah.
That people care about that space, and we just need to get together on what's going to happen when. And Sue and I talked a little bit about perhaps we'll have a test area, just a small space, and we can try restoration on this one space and watch it over time. So there's lots of ideas, but it's out there now.
Yeah.
The ravine is, in the headlights now, and that's real important.
Yeah. It's our first park, I guess, right? Yeah. Okay, that's kind of our little update.
Thank you so much. I guess the conclusion for us then is to follow up with some way to keep the residents of Lake Bluff informed about what these grassroots organizations are doing. And did we come up with a possible way to do that?
Yeah, I think we need to revisit it in the spring with our educational initiatives and our video. I want to make sure that as these groups come together, that we are coordinating and working together with all the experts, and I'm not one of them, with the landscape playbook, updating that, looking at the list, so that there's not one group saying, oh, plant all this, right? And some goes, well, that's not really where we were thinking of going. Should we have that as as a suggested plant list, again, I'm not an expert, does that fit within the community, like with the trees? You know, I think there has to be a little bit of a coordination among the different groups, that we have kind of a database, a plan.
Well, what I was speaking to, though, was kind of what Sophie was saying, that all this exciting stuff is going on. I think that other people would like to know about it, too.
Sure.
So is there a way that we can, and the SEC, facilitate?
Right.
Just, here's the plant list, here's the email address if you want to get involved. How can we support that? I think what you're saying is right, but this is still just getting off the ground, and I think it's really exciting that you've got 90 people on an email list and 30 people are showing up on their own time to get this gorgeous little spot going. So that's where I'm trying to ask, is there, where can these groups go to get the word out?
Are you guys on social media at all? In terms of, do you have a Facebook group or a sort of digital footprint?
No.
Is there something that we can do in maybe the
I mean,
Lake Bluff New?
Open Lands does, so they could,
Yes.
for the ravine restoration, they should be putting that on there so people have access to understand it. I mean, that's
Yes.
a tool.
They have the audience and the channels that are open to that sort of communication, so I definitely encourage any sort of retreats or shares from that group. In terms of the SEC committee, I'm not sure what our communication channels are with the general public outside of,
The Lake Bluff letter is what I'm
The
thinking.
newsletter.
Yeah. Again, and I'm sorry to be devil's advocate, I just want to make sure as we're going through with this, that for instance, let's say, it's not you, but let's say there was a group that came up and recommended for your backyards nativars. Or plants that were not native and said, these are beautiful, they attract bees, and our experts say, it's not really where we should be going, but it went out on some sort of affiliated link of the SEC. That's where I'm just protecting the systematic way and the right way to get these recommended plant lists.
we are certainly not ecology experts
Right.
on this committee.
But so
So
even if
I understand the caution.
Yeah,
for
even
sure.
if it weren't the list, you could say that, because it's a public demonstration on
Sure.
our property, you
Well,
know?
Yeah,
we wouldn't
I
be
think
making-
that's where we are, is this is very exciting that these people got together on their own to do something that we have on our sustainability plan. And I think that's something to be celebrated.
Yes.
And that's why I'm saying, maybe if there are work days coming up, that's something that could go in the Lake Bluff newsletter, or there's going to be a photo session at the Growing Native Gardens, Artesian Native Garden. You know, just how we can help this, because this is really grassroots. These are, you know, this is not social media, you know, this is just people that say, hey, that needs to get watered, let's go water it.
I think from an awareness perspective, we can share and broadcast that awareness in newsletter that this group exists.
Yes.
Not necessarily saying they're telling us to tell you to do these things, but
Right.
we could say, hey, this group exists. If you're interested, reach out to the group, speak with them. I think this committee would also be, like I said, very interested to hear other areas within Lake Bluff that you would like to do similar such projects. I think would be very open to that sort of idea, knowing that there's plenty of green spaces that need a little TLC around here.
I think that's really exciting too.
The other piece would be to connect them with Alexa.
Yes. Alexa is
Oh, I thought
our
you-
high school board member.
I thought you meant the Amazon robot.
It's already listening. You know.
Yes, we don't have to worry about it. You know, so that's the other piece. Alexa is on our board.
Yeah, they may have a timeline, you know, you want to get on there for making student YouTube videos that could then be promoted about it.
It's a great
And I
idea.
think once we hear back from the Historical Society about like the parameters of what constitutes a legacy tree, perhaps that's something that you could help us say, you know, have you planted a
Yeah.
baby native tree in the last
And
No.
a
wonderful-
photograph.
or two?
Both Arbor Day and Earth Day activations and programs that we can promote, I think that's a wonderful idea. As long as we, and to that, I would encourage, and I don't know if this is even possible, but potentially seed banks for citizens to reach out and say, hey, I need some, I want to start a native garden. Do you have seeds for me? I want to start some native trees. Where can I get these seeds, these saplings, things along those lines? I know Paul Witt, who lives on Ravine, over by the Green Bridge right there on the, was it the south side? He
Yes.
just constantly picks up old acorns, plants them in his yard. He's been doing it for years. He just has saplings of oaks that he just kind of throws back in, grows them for 3 years, throws them back in the ravine.
Wow.
That brings up, you talked about genetic diversity, and I know that we want to try and get onto some other topics, but how do we manage the genetic diversity? Because obviously that's important, right? We don't know what's coming in the future in terms of climate or pests. And maybe Jake knows, but I don't know how if we have a list of trees in the playbook for the residents to go, you should get these, or we get 100 trees donated from some oak tree company. We're like, gosh, we've been planting oak trees everywhere for the last 5 years. We don't have this tree, and this tree. How do we encourage that or manage that genetic diversity?
I mean, cataloging would be a Herculean task, but I don't know if that's realistic. I think one of the things we would want to do is fight invasive native species to promote more.
Right, and again, I'm not an expert, but I've seen plantings of the same tree down a street.
Sure.
And I'm like, what if bug comes along that just likes that tree? I'm really worried.
Yeah.
And so it occurs to me that as we're looking at telling residents there could be regular updates, like we're suggesting that you look at these species for the next year or two. We don't want acorn or oak trees everywhere.
No,
Right?
I mean, that's a good idea though. Like maybe every Earth Day and Arbor Day, if we do some sort of legacy tree planting, it's a different tree every year.
Yeah.
Of here's an oak, here's a cottonwood. This is our tree of the year, right?
That's a cute idea.
Yeah.
That is a conundrum though, because, oh gosh, I wish I could remember the name of the Chicago Initiative or something. Anyway, they have.
From Morton Arboretum?
From Morton Arboretum. Regional Tree, that's right.
CRTI.
So they have things that are kind of contradictory in that. So they have one thing where they say no species should be more than 10% of your trees. Well, we're living in an area that was an oak and hickory forest. So then they have, like 2 pages later, they have this whole thing about how important oaks are to sustain our native population of bugs and birds and everything. So if we had only 10% oaks, it would probably be quite damaging to actually, the flora and fauna. So we don't quite know exactly what that balance is. But I think one thing is for certain is we could probably stop planting the ginkgos and the London plane trees and those trees at least, right? Because they've been studied and ginkgos support almost no native insects at all. They're
These
almost
are the
sterile.
ornamental trees that have traditionally been used in landscaping.
Well, and they've been planted on our parkways too. They've been
Tolerant, so they're used a lot.
Yeah, I know.
salt
Just
tolerant and all that.
for the
yeah.
audience at home.
Yeah. Well, so one thing though that we,
Chicago Botanical Garden listed them as their #1 tree for 2050 climate change. So,
Yeah.
Are you
people.
talking oaks?
no,
ginkgos.
ginkgos probably.
The #1 tree for climate change because it will not die.
There's no way to kill them. That's been
They
millions
live,
of years.
They're
and
older
they-
than the dinosaur. They'll live for 500 years. All that kind of stuff. So
Some bug will come along though. I don't
The
know.
one
It's
along
hard to know,
Sheridan
you know.
is stunning.
yeah, but you're right. It doesn't support the animals and So I think that goes back to managing I like the idea of a tree or 5 trees a year. These are the ones we're recommending for a year to encourage that diversity. And if we feel the oaks are dying off in some areas, maybe we say, no, this year that is the oaks again. I feel like there has to be some plan there and not just plant whatever you want.
Yeah, it's a challenge when it's volunteer work
Yeah.
and the research. So we applaud all of your efforts and definitely encourage and would love to support you guys in the future. So
Yep. Thank you.
Success, big success.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your efforts. And I think going back to the playbook and some of the other things, I think we should have a yearly meeting just dedicated to going over the house plant lists and seeing if they need updates and coordinating with the garden club and others to see. All right. Next up is general business.
Sure, so we really have,
No, I was just saying general business.
general business. I'm far from a general, don't worry about that. So on your agenda tonight, a relatively brief one. We're really just looking at some interim results, if you would, from the planning studies you recommended, or requested, I should say, on bicycle transportation within the village. We're looking for your feedback on some of what we've come up with so far, and then trying to get some meeting scheduling done, at least through the end of the year, trying to maximize our participation and pick off a couple items along the way.
Sure.
I've got a brief slideshow here, if you can give me one moment.
That was so fun reading all this.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
It's nice, the issue that is the right scale to wrap yourself around, I would say. Here we go. So again, as a reminder, earlier this year, you identified 4 goals that we shared with the village board. One is public education, which we just spoke about. The second is creating and recommending a lighting ordinance, commonly known as a dark sky ordinance. We'll come back to this, but I think this will be on your next meeting agenda for discussion. The third was bicycle planning, and we understand really more specifically, we're looking at the topic of a route that connects from the Robert McClory Trail and then indirectly to the west side of the village and to our regional network. Really, what's the most efficient way to get east from the Robert McClory Trail through downtown, through the east side residential neighborhoods to Sunrise Park and Beach, the namesake of the village, our most important natural asset, et cetera, et cetera. And then finally, the leaf blower review of leaf blower regulations. You remember there was an amendment you recommended that was adopted to the sustainability plan. There's this multi-jurisdictional working group that I know Chair Renner, I understand they're preparing to finish their report in December.
Yep.
We anticipate that'll come back to your group at that time as well. So again, we tried to take, we've been looking at this bicycle planning question. I tip my hat here to the village's administrative intern, a planning student who you met before, Eric Mueller. He's not here to present due to his class schedule, but this is primarily a lot of his legwork in putting all this analysis together and bringing it to your attention. So certainly appreciate his work on this. But our
Give him our compliments.
Yes.
Good job.
Very good. So our plan of attack here, and I'll give you the next slide, is we know that in the residential, we split this into 2 sections, right? The first is really these first couple of blocks of downtown because that's a harder environment to engineer in, and depending on the route that's preferred, there may be much less of a need to design our way through that. And the second, where we're really focused on trying to find the route that makes the more sense, is in the residential section of town, really running from Evanston Avenue all the way down to the beach. And our thinking in how we framed this was figure out the residential preferences back into this most difficult block or 2 of downtown, and that's a good way to break up the work and find a good design solution. So in doing this, we looked at really, we did a survey of existing conditions, right? We know that widths matter. There's a whole appendix about widths at the end of this report. We know that really the street design matters, right? We know that based on the geometry of a street, that affects how let's say, comfortable or pleasurable it is for bicyclists to use it as they can legally do, which is riding in the street as they would regular traffic. And what we see in all 3 of these streets, what's really, I think, a blessing for the village is, many other suburbs have wider streets, multi-lane roads. They rely a lot more on, they have a road network that is much more designed to move lots of traffic faster. And Lake Bluff, in some ways, we're blessed to not have that problem. We have relatively narrow roads that have relatively low traffic volumes, low speeds. They're very calm roads. A lot of these other peer communities are really looking at things like road diets and chicanes and trying to retrofit in things that create more pleasant atmospheres for bicyclists, for pedestrians, for all road users. The upside is the village really starts with that. It was built with that and it's kept that. The downside that we'll come back to is, many of these interventions are built to take up road width, and that's not really something we have to spare in many of these routes. But on the scale, based on width and lanes and speed limit, you have a 1 to 4 scale. 4 is the worst, 1 is the best, and you look at all 3 of these routes, you're at the 1 scale as it is. So a bicyclist can go on, by the textbook, right, a bicyclist should be able to go on any of these routes and feel safe. The second part we looked at too is, like what's the actual traffic on the street, right? We know that we're interested in trying to, balance, trying to pick routes that are naturally utilized, right? We don't want to force water uphill, as it were, but we're trying to find calmer streets. We're trying to find streets where there's less competing traffic. We're trying to find streets that have safe speeds, right? Again, we are in some ways blessed here in that, all of these roads on the east side are relatively calm, especially, center functions as a bit of a major collector, minor arterial here, whatever, on the east side. So you do see some higher traffic counts, some higher speeds. Part of that is that you have this one-way division on each side of the median. But on Scranton, on Prospect, you have daily trips in the hundreds, you have low average speeds, you have streets that are performing as they should. This far right column says what's the percentile streets of vehicles that are at or below the speed limit. The design target is 85%. So 15% should be above the limit, 85% should be below. Center, you're not quite hitting that number, right? These still aren't wildly out of proportion, but Prospect and Scranton, you're both.
And where's this data coming from?
Yeah, so this is village collected data. We have a multi-purpose, if you would, speed board / traffic counter. So all of these measurements are taken at the intersection of the listed street and Glen Avenue, so 1 block east of Evanston. The speed board is posted on a pole, and it measures the speed of all oncoming vehicles, takes a photo of each, and we can get very granular with, what cars, when, counts, speeds.
Times of day.
Exactly.
And how long has the data set been going for these purposes? Like a month,
Yeah,
a year?
each
2
of these
years?
is like a week-long sampling. They were all
week-long.
taken
Okay.
in the last year or so. I mean, you get a scope of a week, and typically, most traffic studies, like you can leave the counters out for longer, but
Yeah.
the averages tend to hold up as long as you don't have strange weather or anything like that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Weather's definitely, an annual rate would be more affected by weather.
Yeah, these are all, just summer months, good weather, really been taken in the last year or sooner. I'll mention too, so a lot of what we're using this board for is enforcement, right? Typically it's a before and after test. We have the board out there for a week, we see what conditions are, then we physically turn the board on, so that's where you see the strobe and hey, you're going too fast, slow down.
Oh, yeah.
And you can watch it come down. All of this is untreated conditions, so the board's not running when we get these speeds.
No sorts of warnings or anything like that. Do we have any data on sort of car bicycle accidents on these avenues that would warrant protected bicycle areas? Or any data in terms of car bicycle accidents throughout the village?
Yeah, we can bring that to you in a final report. I mean, generally speaking, really none. We have some ways to pull statistics out of our crash data and present those, but for our purposes here, if we went back far enough, you might be able to find one, but nothing in
Not
the
for
last
this sample
5
set.
to 10
but
years. Yeah.
5 to 10 years, really no
Yeah.
sorts of
That's
incidents.
assuming that the bicycles, particularly with youth, are on the street and not on the sidewalk.
I'm just talking about the proposed areas that we are looking at right now. Have there been any incidents that would make us favor one route in terms of the others? And it sounds like there's been no such incidents whatsoever that would call for protecting one area over another.
That we know of.
Yeah, we'll show you a final report pulling that together when we finalize this out, but at least in just our round tabling of it, we've got nothing in, for some time. So all that's to say, we look at the existing conditions, and the story we think is, the conditions are good as it is. I mean, these are all, in some ways, interventions. We're trying to optimize for a few things, including cost and necessity and so on. And certainly, I think, we wanted to do this study. We expect you'll recommend interventions, but just pointing out that we're in a good place to start with. As far as interventions, we really looked at three alternatives. From as far as a strength of intervention and costs, these are a progression, right? So the first is a bicycle boulevard, or really, the most visual indicator of this is the Sharrow marking, which is I have my bike icon on the street. It shows,
Hey, cars, watch out for bikes.
yeah, it raises awareness that they're there. It shows the lateral alignment of where the bicyclist should be. There are other wraparound interventions you do with this, again, mostly built for higher traffic roads, intersection treatments, things like that. Many of those aren't needed on these streets. The primary change would be the Sharrow marking. Then as we keep advancing, we get into bicycle lanes, and then, which again, you're striping down one side of the road. Generally speaking, on these roads, you either need to make them no parking to get the lane width to do this, or you need to widen the road, which is typically people are in the business of narrowing these, not widening them right now. In some cases, it's hard to get, lanes on both sides and really have a standard width, even if you prohibit parking. That's shown a little bit in the appendices. And then finally, at the most, the heaviest duty intervention, you're talking about a shared use path or side path. Sometimes it's called when it's parallel to a road. That's the Macquarie Trail, that's the North Shore Trail. That's complete separation from vehicles. And that's a considerably more expensive endeavor. I mean, roughly here, you're an order of magnitude, right? As you can see in the packet, and we'll come here, Sharrow markings at the worst, you can do this in under $10,000 in this section. A bike lane, you're talking 17, probably 20 to 25, a little bit more. You do need a little bit more engineering of that. You actually have to work a little bit with how you transition through the intersections and things. That takes an engineer to design, but it's still relatively affordable. As soon as we get into a shared use path, assuming that we are removing the existing sidewalk, we're putting in that asphalt path, the costs instantly jump up by a margin of 20 times or more. And coming back here before we move on off this slide too, I'd say if we look at the IDOT recommendations, which I wouldn't say are the best, they would say there is no recommended intervention for a suburban road at a speed limit under 45 miles an hour. So all of this is kind of above and beyond as far as creating an accommodating environment for bicyclists. Generally speaking, and
So Glenn, the idea with the Sharrow is that it would be on both sides.
Yeah, you have one in one lane of traffic, one in the other. And again, you're giving that visual cue to the motorist, hey, there's bicyclists frequently on this
And you're
route.
telling bicycles, you're welcome here.
You're telling them you're welcome here, and you're also giving them a visual clue. This is where you should be in the road. Oftentimes you're trying to get them.
Out of the middle of the road.
It depends. Sometimes you are trying to get them out of the gutter and into the line of traffic, so you don't have people trying to make what can be unsafe passing maneuvers around them in some context.
So the boulevard option is a parking-friendly option, correct? But the bicycle lane visual separation is a non-parking friendly.
Generally speaking.
Yes. I was a bike commuter for quite some time in downtown Chicago, so I'm very familiar.
So Glenn, I want to follow up with one thing you said about you don't want people too close to the curb.
At times.
So that people are going around them. So if they're here, you just don't want people going around them at all? Is that the idea?
We'd look at where exactly to place them. In this particular case, what you're probably trying to do is set them, we're trying not to set them in a position where they're blocked by parked vehicles when they're there. Sometimes you're trying to set that far enough out that a vehicle can open its door and, you're trying to keep them out of that line. You probably don't have the width here to quite do that perfectly. Many share road markings are in that door
It'd
zone.
be great if we did this and then we start having accidents. Sorry, just
Yeah.
joking.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But generally speaking, you're looking at sort of that center of the right third of the lane of travel.
Got it.
So someone can make a passing movement without too much difficulty. You're not asking them to take the lane, although legally they can.
Right.
But you're keeping them again out of, you're
Harm's
showing
way.
them a good place in the road to be.
Thank you.
So a little bit more here before we move on. Just, again, so IDOT says, these are all above and beyond for a road at these speeds. What you're really looking at here, if I can find my page. For bicycle lanes, we're really talking about, kind of the floor for when you would even start to look at implementing them is about 500 trips down the road daily. For shared use paths, I mean, it's thousands by the time planners would generally say that the cost benefit is there. Similarly, there's usually floors on the speeds, and you're under where those floors would be. That's not to say they're not recommended, but again, just illustrating this is going above and beyond in terms of making accommodation for folks and signaling that we're interested in welcoming bicyclists. So we gave you just a simple decision matrix here. Here's each road. Here's what makes sense for speed. Again, are you within the minimum max? For most of these, it's shown as a no because you're, again, below the floor. Same for volume. We've shown you a very generalized estimate of costs. Again, we haven't done a formal engineering estimate on these. This is based on recent bidding, a 20% allowance for design and construction engineering, no inflation for future years. So let's say you're budgeting this to be built in 2025. I'm instantly adding another 20% or something to this cost, but just again, an order of magnitude. And then finally looking at, do you have the width to do this without altering the street? So when you look at all these things, you put them together, again, the existing conditions are okay. We think the Shero approach is really is appropriate to these roads. It's the easiest to implement. The others you could look at also, but again, you're getting into harder costs. You're getting into potentially more design work, especially looking at a shared use path too. Bicycle lanes, and especially shared use paths, it's not very common to have them in residential contexts where you have all these curb cuts and where you have drivers backing up. If you use the North Shore path as it crosses those commercial driveways going west, you know that those can be interesting at times. Typically, the bicyclist has the right of way. In those cases, the bicyclist is supposed to yield the right of way in the driveway, which isn't really great. And that gets harder in a residential context. And then thinking about, how would you look at the roads? Again, we think the logical progression here is to start with Prospect. You have really the best starting conditions there. You've got a lot of road width, especially really the most important thing probably as you look towards what's the rest of this implementation is you have a trail connector here already through Artesian Park. We know we're about to do improvements right here, and so we have some opportunity to tweak things a little bit if we'd like to. And then you also have, potentially, you have connections to Ravine Park are a little easier. The only downs, and then you get to the beach, and you come right into the park, and the only downside is it's the furthest separated from the beach entrance here on Scranton, and
As well as downtown.
and from downtown, yeah. And there's ways to manage that. I mean, at Sunrise Park and Beach, there's no parking on Sunrise.
Right,
And
so
so
you could
you-
do a trail north.
Yeah, you can do a trail north. You've got lots of options. You could really do something like that also on Evanston or Glen to give you a north-south route. It'll be hard to make it feel integrated to the downtown. That's you can probably do something on Evanston and make it functional, but it
And I
won't be
think,
natural.
Brian, that was like your initial wish, right?
Yeah, and I'm not, we looked at one point of just kind of getting people into the initial foot into the downtown. and maybe not making that part of the path that goes to the parks. We could have a park path and a downtown bike path. I mean, they don't have to be continuous. It was just nice to have them both there. The biggest problem I have is that, you know, if I want to come down for a beer or I want to come down for an event, you know, crossing the road, finding a place to set my bike other than at the train station, which has terrible secure parking.
Yes.
You know, and Glenn had come up with some great ideas for on the grassy area just outside the train station, like you've seen at Lake Forest, that covered parking. If that's a place that, okay, I come there and then I go to go get a beer and get some dinner, or to the farmer's market and then bring it across, load up my bike and take it back. At least that creates a intersection point. We also talked about at one point even taking one of the first or two parking spaces next to the bank or something to create a bike rack area, stopping area, because we've looked, a lot of cities are going to, let's take the parking place out, let's put tables out there, let's create this area for dining. And so that whole shopping dining area, I just want to make it more bike friendly, bike stop, bike secure.
I think bringing bikes into downtown is probably not the safest option for anyone, either bikers or pedestrians or drivers. I do really like this idea of putting bike rack, because I think there's a bike rack by the community church space, I believe, near Bluffington's right there on the corner. I like this idea of putting bike racks kind of on the perimeter so no matter where you come from, there is sort of a bike-friendly space.
And I know that they're looking at that with the architectural board and the planning board at putting what I would call non-secure convenient bike racks along the businesses. But I'm just looking at coming at a decent speed, 20 miles per hour from the terraces where I'm coming from, zooming into a spot, parking my bike, and not zooming in, trying to navigate through Center Avenue, through traffic, and not having a secure place to put my bike. I just want to zoom in, pick up some dinner, pick up my burrito at, you know, other door or whatever, and put it in my backpack and go back. And I can't do that easily right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Lake Bluff was set up for zooming straight to the door like that. You know,
Well, not even at the door, but if it's within a reasonable walking distance. But I think we can make it that way. I mean, right now, look at what we've done to transform downtown right now, taking cars out of the picture. No, we're gonna set up tables, we're gonna set up, you know, block parties, we're gonna redirect traffic around there, so we do that now. So I think that's one component of it. The second component was making it very easy and safe for children and moms with their 3 kids trailing behind them to get to the beach. I want to get people away from using cars all the time, parking down at the beach. They got to get on their bikes. That's just my view. It's part of the sustainability initiative to shift transportation to walking and biking and away from.
You know what, though, I have to say I agree with the way the downtown is set up. It feels very pedestrian. And if there's a way to ride your bike from where you live to a secure place and then get off your bike and then enjoy this pedestrian area that we have right now, that's kind of the best of both worlds, because you're saying, yes, ride your bike to the farmer's market, park it right here, get your bag, you know, and then walk to the farmer's market, because that's fun.
Right.
Or walk to the other door, or walk wherever you want to go, because walking is good too. And then go back to your bike instead of going back to your car.
Right.
You know, so we have safe places to park our cars. Now we need safe places to park our bikes. And then we go and shop or dine or meet with friends and walk back out. So I think that I have that vision too. But then this idea of getting on Prospect is so exciting to me. I think that's a really fun bike ride right now. I mean, we know we use these streets, especially early in the morning. It's really great to come from Sheridan Road and ride all the way down to the lake. I mean, that's just fabulous.
I mean, Lake Bluff was a beach town, right? Like we were, and I think if we were to establish some sort of route that could especially connect the train station to the beach, it provides a marketing opportunity for the village of Lake Bluff to say, ride your bike to the beach, put your bike on the Metro, ride your bike to the beach, come have a beach day from, you know,
Yes.
because you're not gonna be able to really do that in other places, and then we're generating revenue for the parks by being able to talk about something like that.
So is it an option as well, just looking at the direct line from the train station to the beach? Like,
Well, that's
I mean, I
right through downtown,
understand
right?
why we, right,
But I mean,
that one block. I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
as you were saying, people are gonna take the shortest route. So just
Yeah, and
playing
we,
devil's advocate.
yeah, and we know typically the signs go up, particularly in the summer, and that's when these bike trails, particularly for the beach and shopping, are heaviest. I mean, as it starts getting to, 32 and below, the hardcore cyclists are gonna go, but the families aren't. But I also don't know if we use Prospect, whether, you could jog a leg up
On the bike path.
north to the Center Avenue, like a wing. I don't know if there's some way to, to do that, or whether we have two paths. But I mean, we don't have to decide tonight, but I'm just,
Do you mean just going from Prospect, like up Glen to
Yeah.
Scranton? That's what you,
yeah, and creating a stop point there. Like you come along the path and it has a sign, turn this way to park in the Central Business District.
Is there any plan by the village to keep the block in front of the restaurants just pedestrian?
Yeah, so the village's recent downtown streetscape concept plan flushes through a bunch of these things, actually. It includes added bike parking or a bike shelter towards the train station, but still kind of separate from the train parking.
Yeah, the train parking's a disaster.
Yeah, that's a separate issue to upgrade that, but yeah.
And then, so it does call for, and here in Block 1, if you can see my cursor, it does call for more of a shared street approach. So part of it is curbless. It's more convertible for special events. Still doesn't look that different from how it does today in some sense. I mean, there's still diagonal parking on one side, parallel on the other, I
So
believe.
it'll keep.
Can you bring up a Google map
It would be so nice to just get cars off
with a
there.
satellite view? It might be helpful to kind of,
Yeah, in fact, I'll bring up the plan real quick.
I mean, I keep going back to Ravine just because it's like the traffic there is 5 miles an hour. Like there's
It's pretty.
no one speeding on that road whatsoever, and it's so scenic and beautiful too. Like if we came
I
through
mean,
the
that's where
park,
we ride our bikes now.
yeah, we came through the park and went down Ravine, crossed the bridge. The only issue is when you get across,
Yes.
what is that, Moffett?
Uh-huh.
You get right
Yes.
across there, it gets to be a little blind.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah. But maybe that's where it goes over to Prospect or something.
yeah, this is.
Oh, that
the
could
one we
be.
looked at.
Oh, that'd be nice. Yeah, it's beautiful over there.
So this is a one-way oriented plan. I believe there's a two-way alternative as well, but this one calls for traffic to be one-way, east to west. You can see there's this curbless street section on the top, and there's proposals for a flex lane along the north end.
Oh, okay, so this is just by the gazebo there, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you keep the diagonal parking on the south end, but again, for being curbless, here, let me,
For that one piece.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, we
So then
talked
you get a
about
more-
that. Yeah, I remember this now.
You get a more flexible lane, you get one-way westbound, you get diagonal parking, and that gives you a lot more opportunities to extend out outdoor dining and extend into the street for events.
Yeah, and I love this when I saw it. It's just, I thought, okay, you're really reducing traffic. You've got a one-way option. You're extending retail and dining and stuff, but there was no thought of how to get bikes to this location. And, or through it, or right next to it, right up to it, real close. I mean, I'm not a big car fan, so I love the idea of, putting more pedestrian friendly, particularly in the downtown area, and making it walkable and safe for kids to be out, particularly if you've noticed during the summer, sometimes the parents will be having a beer outside and the kids will want to cross the street
Yeah.
to go play in the park, and the more safe that is, the better.
Yeah, I mean, we need parking, but I'd love to see it just be pedestrian.
Yeah.
I mean, people really don't use the train parking all that well either. They don't, a lot of them didn't realize that after a certain time it's free anyway.
Yeah,
No, I
don't
think nobody
that's
knows
well
that.
known.
You know,
That could go in the news, Little Lake Bluff Friday letter. FYI.
they did put some more signage up, but I think even like,
Could we put it in the letter?
There's a lot of signage up there already in terms of just trying to tell people what's going on with the parking. It's a little
flashing
bit like,
neon sign,
yeah,
free.
yeah.
But people also don't want to walk a half a block from the train station to the,
Well, that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah, I mean, the whole other.
Who are these people? Let's shame them in the newsletter. No, I'm just,
they can get one of
Just
those
kidding,
scooters
folks.
to come over from the train station.
yeah, yeah. The e-scooters or whatever. That's funny.
I will offer, maybe unsolicited opinion, but I mean, that's the perimeter type of approach you guys are talking about. I think you can make it work here. I think it is a common way that planners don't achieve bike parking elsewhere. I mean, there's kind of this dichotomy here, right, where we presume that if I'm going to the brewery, I should have 8 parking spots for a car within 50 feet of the brewery. But if I'm a bicyclist, I'm a nuisance, and I should be expected to park at the perimeter of the district. Again, because Lake Bluff is more pedestrian-oriented, and because it is just practically difficult to ride a bike here compared to other downtowns, I think you can make it work. But it is one of those things you wrestle with, and that you do have. What's the right balance? In most districts, bicyclists just, the mode withers, right? People just don't use bikes.
Yeah.
Here in Lake Bluff, you have enough interest that you see really the opposite, which is people just bring their bikes and they leave them on the sidewalk or they lean them up
Yeah.
against whatever, and they don't really care if there's a rack there or not.
Yeah.
I have a whole photo album of such occasions that I've collected over the years. So trying
I always
to find
worry
a
about
balance.
elderly people or whatever on the sidewalk when you've got kids,
Mm-hmm.
going on the sidewalk on their bikes. I have just a stupid question. So in block 1, that parking just to the north of the bank, is that public parking?
No.
Okay, I was just saying, if it is, I never appreciated that. Okay, so it's just
There is
private back there.
There is a segment that is, so the Walnut Avenue lot here, this part,
Yeah.
Right,
part
of
is.
course.
Yep.
Yes.
But
I
this
just
is
thought,
all
is that
private.
something that I just, after 20 years of living here, never realized I could park there?
I don't
But
think
no,
that's
okay.
that parking lot's been there for 20 years, has it? I don't think.
Been there? I
I don't
don't
think
know.
that
I-
parking
It
lot's
about
been
20
there.
years,
like
yeah.
it's-
Has it been 20 years since that whole
I don't know
development
the
went up?
exact date, but yeah, it would have been before Block 1 was redeveloped.
Yeah.
It would have been purchased in the early 2000s.
I remember it was
believe.
just
So
a
who does
grass
it
lot.
go to? Does it go to the bank and stuff?
Goes to the bank, Griffith Grant Lackey, the mortgage company, and
So their
also
clients can park
Mavery,
there.
and I think there's pub parking there or brewery parking there too, isn't there?
How's there?
I guess two different parts. So this is the village's public parking, and this is the
Right.
part I think was picked up
I'm,
about 20
yeah,
years ago.
talking about the,
Yeah, this was built about, 2008, 2009, so it's been a little over 10. And yeah, this is all kind of the developers' private parking for this development, and that is,
All the
Griffin
businesses in
and-
there, yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of signs
it's
up
for
on
the,
it.
for the staff and stuff of those places. It's not like if you're
I don't know
going
if
to
it's
the
staff
brewer-
only. I think that there might be some customer stuff too. I think the bank is customer. I think Griffith Grant and Lackey is employee only.
Kind of up to the tenants how
Little
they.
reconnaissance and report back.
Yes, sorry, it's just a digression. I just was like, wait, what
You know
is
what,
that parking
I
back
just thought of this too, looking at bikes in downtown Lake Bluff. Do the business owners have a say in,
there? Be good to get their input.
to get their input? Because if you think about it, if I owned Mavery's, I would say a car may have 4 people in it, 4 customers that could come to me. Where if you're on a bike, it's just you.
But a car takes up 4 times, maybe 6 times the space that a bicycle.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think
Yeah.
about
Yeah,
how
yeah.
a business owner might, their input would be valuable to us, to get their perspective on parking and biking and pedestrian and their needs,
Mm-hmm.
in addition to our needs.
I mean, if I were
Or
a
the
business owner on the fringes, I would be like, yeah, put those bike racks right by my store.
And I'm sure
You
others,
know,
like
they're-
other
Yeah,
store
yeah,
would
exactly.
love
Yes.
that.
It's good to bring the input but we didn't necessarily ask for their input on recycling either. You know, we could
Yeah.
ask them on waste and recycling, we might not like the answers
Yeah,
as a
yeah.
sustainability committee with the businesses.
Yeah,
So,
giving us the business.
It could just be data.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean we have to.
you know, I mean, one of the things
Polls,
we did when we
anonymous
were on
polls.
the village board is we started trying to get the employees of businesses to park in the train stop lot. So we put up employee parking, business district parking.
In the train
signs
parking lot?
in the
Yeah.
train parking lot. And we're trying to enforce that to get them from not taking up parking downtown for customers.
Sure.
But going back to this, but you know, the idea of, like you said, backing into the business district, or let's adjust the residential and the business, I think is great. And, you know, I think the idea of whether you were able to ride a bike right up at 20 miles an hour, fast as you can pedal, and screech at Mabry and pop out, maybe that's not the solution, but maybe, you know, going up to the bank or that piece of grassy area, setting up a structure, a lit, present structure, so that you come off the bike path, you park there, you push the button to walk across the street, and you're done. You know?
Yeah.
It's very friendly.
Or even, yeah, right by the fire department.
Yes.
I think that would be
Yes.
a perfect space for that. So it doesn't interfere with like the village green, it doesn't interfere with the look and feel of that space, but like, it's kind of very, like, I don't know,
And I think you want it.
an unused space over
Yeah,
there.
I think you want it very notable, very prominent.
Yeah.
So that people see it, and, oh, that's where I can park my
As
bike.
they're driving through.
Or the
yeah.
farmer's market, or Mabry's, or,
While we're on the
Like
subject
what
of bicycles, I do want to call to the attention that I was biking home, I can't remember, a couple of weeks ago, and underneath, just west of the viaduct, as you go underneath the viaduct, right, on the south side of 176, you come around there, there is no lighting in that stretch of bike path whatsoever, and it can get very dark there. I did not have a light on me. I ran off the trail.
Oh, my.
Really?
It was
Did you get caught by the fence?
no, but some buckthorn, you know, like in the face. It was pitch black. So I think it's something that we should try and throw some lights in
Have a
there.
lighting plan for that
we have a
area.
lighting plan for that bike path all the way down to the middle school.
Oh, great.
It's,
Yeah, I didn't know that was
There's a
going on.
plan.
But it's a plan.
it's a plan, yeah, it's pretty expensive plan. I mean, I think it was what, 120 a few years ago. The number's probably 160 to 170 now. We've tried to get grant funding for it a couple times, and we're not getting
Didn't
close.
the state just recently open funding for safe pathways and bikes just recently?
They opened the ITEP grant, which is like a bicyclist and pedestrian improvement project. Previously, we went for Safe Routes funding for it, which is school-oriented. I mean, the state is, compared to other places I've worked, Kansas, Missouri, the state is very guarded about their scoring of these, which I find frustrating personally. But it's scored poorly enough. Because it doesn't actually create a route. It doesn't actually, you know, promote safely directly. It just doesn't score well on their rubric, which I think
But
is
yeah,
very
I mean,
unfortunate.
that's not even like a bike thing. It's more of like a pedestrian safety issue of, you know, that there is,
It's a dangerous area.
It's a dark,
it's a very dark, and it provides, I'm not gonna
well,
put bad things out into the universe, but, you know, would someone with malintent want to do something with malintent in the area? That's an area where something like that would
Yeah.
happen.
It makes me think a little bit, not your story, but the safe parking. I don't know if you guys have ever spent time. I was just very impressed when I was on Martha's Vineyard last year. You know, it's a very obviously biking area, and in Edgartown, there's a bike rack that's about the width of gazebo, the park there. And in the evening, it's 100% packed. Like, everyone knows that's where the bikes go, and they all go in and then walk all through town. Like, it's just culture that here's a huge bike place, you put your bike, and you know, you don't bike through town.
Right, and if you look at the, like, Bluffinias, what you see is people just throwing their bikes on the lawn, stacking up against the wooden fence.
Or the trees.
Or the
yeah.
trees.
Yeah.
right.
And so I agree with you. I I have been pushing for formalized bike locations in that, just like you're talking
It's
about.
a massive bike rack. I mean, it's kind of a mess because you do see the kids, like they
Right,
kind of
right,
throw the
yeah.
bikes at the rack.
But you have a spot, and it's not against the trees, it's
Yeah.
not against the fence, which could be damaged. And it also is a central spot for people to go.
I love it right by the fire department right there. I think that's
Well, you
a
know what,
nice
we
visible
just
spot
finished
for it.
a
Yeah.
lot of college trips for my youngest.
Lucky
And
you.
you talk about getting really resourceful with where to park bikes.
Yeah.
And scooters. And they allow a lot of space for it, and the kids use it, and they're not riding their bikes to class and leaning the bike up against the building. They all know where to park, and they're open, and they're safe, and they're big. And it's just university after university, they've got it down.
And they're visible. That's
And
the
they're
thing
visible.
about, like with the train station, the bike parking there is not visible. It's not in the public eye, and so it
Dark,
provides
yeah.
opportunities for folks to.
Yeah,
But
I've-
when you're
I've known
walking,
tons of people who've had their bikes stolen, mine was stolen.
Yeah.
My husband's last 3.
Yeah, and but we know that's a separate issue, those racks are not the appropriate racks to have at
Yeah, I
the
know.
train station.
Or just the location themselves. They're all tucked away, hidden behind the building, and there's no visibility to it. You know, if they were brought out onto that exit strip right there, if they were all kind of put right there, I think
Harder to,
we would. Yeah.
but
If just someone's, no
if
one's
you
gonna
can't
be.
use a U-lock and get a good,
Yeah, I just use my beater bike. I know no one's gonna steal my broke down Schwinn from there. They're gonna go for somebody's truck or something. You know.
right.
Okay, Glenn,
all right,
where do you need us to go with this?
let's focus back.
Yeah.
This is
so-
nice.
Is that the answer?
Nice small group here, we're just having fun.
Yeah, I can't find those photos I was talking about, but I'll share them later for
Yes.
to tie off that very enjoyable part of our conversation. So cool.
Yeah.
A couple.
You have our input. Yeah.
Yeah, so a couple comments I'd make just reacting to parts of your conversation. We'll come back to closing this out. So we do have, there is a chunk of money from the streetscape project this spring for bicycle racks, partially because of how, or the original thought was let's use that at the metro station and replace the parking, the bicycle racks there, and then look to downtown in future years. Just with how things have changed after the pandemic, we're looking at that again. But I mean, the goal is that there will be some new racks by the next cycling season in the spring.
Great.
So stay tuned for details on that. That won't be the shelter.
I would hope, though, that we're not just using money and sprinkling, like, I'd love to see us do something real that's a real statement. Like, we want to be a bike-friendly community, and here's a significant rack, as opposed to, like, little, I don't know, it's just.
I see what you're saying, though, and I'm going back to university model again. It's just normal. It's just, here are the bikes, there's the building. It's just, you can't imagine a university without that. And if we make that statement, here's the bike, there's the shopping, here's the bike, there's the, flower shop. If we can find a way to incorporate it into, this is just how we live here.
I
This
mean,
is how we get
like
around.
off the, here you have the bank, and then you had that grassy area with trees. What if it's just there, like a big,
That's
huge bike
private
rack?
property, though, isn't it? Is that
The street can't be.
Oh, not the street.
I'm not sure which
mean,
strip we're talking about.
The metro station
In front of the bank across from the Metro.
project, I think, is going to be somewhat of a statement place, right? Of sheltered, large resources. We also have, aren't we planning on putting in like bike pumps or air pumps along the bike path?
Yeah,
That's
so
just-
the South Sheridan Road plan, which budgetarily did not work out this year, is
Oh, okay, I've been
here
wondering.
in
I
this
walked
neighborhood.
there all
too.
the time.
People
and
are
I keep
asking me
telling my
about that.
husband, I'm like, it's supposed to be going in. It's supposed to be going in. Like, where is it?
I think from us, from an FCC, what I want to deliver to the village board, because I know that the bike racks for the train station are already in kind of the thought process, planning process. This, with the whole pedestrian, whether it's the fire station or it's the separate shelter for outside the train station from the racks underneath for commuters, I think we need to deliver something to the board that is comprehensive and shows what we want or what we recommend as a committee, and let the village board find a way to fund it. Maybe it's a 4-year funding plan, maybe it's we do this, we do this, we do this. But I don't want to piecemeal it like, well, we're gonna do some racks as part of the downtown development. They're just a simple, racks that aren't, you know, just decorative. Then we got a separate plan for the bike rack, you know, at the replacement upgrades at the train station. But I'm talking about like a different approach, I guess, for residents.
A strategic place.
A strategic plan with a laid out, with details.
So then it becomes which bike racks serve which part of our community, right? We have the West Terrace racks serving, and North Terraces probably, Tangley Oaks would be served by the Metra, right?
Right.
We have, you know, East Lake Bluff would probably be best served potentially by either the fire department or something over by the library.
Yes.
I mean, is that what you're talking about? A little more
and
strategic?
tied into this whole, what we
Yes.
recommend for the pathways. All together, one plan.
So this
I
is
concur.
biking in Lake Bluff.
Yes,
This is where you park, this is where you ride.
A comprehensive infrastructure plan.
yes.
Yeah, that's right.
And it can be only phase one to get to the village board, and it's flushed out more from there. But I think we should have all these things at least blocked out.
Great.
So I don't know, if you want to finish up with the, because I know you had more to present.
Well, no, I mean, the presentation was mostly done. I mean, this is,
This shows we care about biking.
yeah, you really jumped ahead to the last step, which is, you know, give us some feedback, and maybe we can recap one more time what your thinking is on preferred alternatives. We talked a lot about downtown, but want to make sure we understand your consensus for these residential routes. It sounds like the next steps would be, we'll bring you back potentially some more wraparound options in downtown, and then we can talk about, you know, options for public engagement and where the recommendations go. So to summarize, what I'm hearing is there's, at least for the east-west, I think I'm hearing that, you know, the Prospect Avenue route makes sense, and tying in through Artesian to the bike path makes sense. Really,
Maybe a north thing to the beach entrance.
yeah, maybe some north-south here at Sunrise, maybe some north-south here at Evanston.
I think you have to.
Yeah,
It's just denying reality if you don't.
yeah.
People do it anyway.
Of course.
And then really trying to bring you back some more options to enhance bicycle parking in the downtown, and we're trying to take a route directly through downtown.
Identifying areas for bicycle parking and infrastructure that would serve the entire community, right? Strategically placed to serve specific parts of Lake Bluff.
Right, like parking by Ravine Park, if you've got Prospect right there, then you have bike parking. We put bike parking there. So that idea of strategic bike parking. So you park your bike.
I was just talking about downtown. I wasn't talking about like throughout the entire
Right,
village.
but there's the beach. I mean, you'd have to think if you're creating this route, it's like a
Yes.
scenic whatever. Where are the places people are likely to stop and
Yeah.
get out?
Right. And
And again, that maybe is tiered. You maybe don't do all those at
Well,
one
the,
time.
the
but-
beach has those brand new bike racks that are just put in by the entrance, which we use all the time. I could definitely see more going in though. It feels like those are packed every weekend we bike down there.
Yeah, when the bike racks are used, they're used. I know there was some discussion that there's some, you know, they're all empty, they're all full, but that's okay.
Yeah,
They're there.
yeah.
And it's making a statement, we want to support you.
Yep.
Okay.
So-
And again, thank the intern who put it together.
yes, it's a beautiful piece of work here.
Wish they'd come work for me. Need more interns.
Well, you know, he'll need a job soon.
So is he going into urban planning?
Yeah, that's right. So he'll graduate actually in a month, from UIC, well over a month, 6 weeks from UIC with his master's in urban planning. We agreed
good
when
for
he
him.
came here that he'd commit
Right.
to staying here through.
Send his resume to me and I'll pass it on to my firm too.
There you go. Eric will be thrilled. Just wait a couple months before he passes on. That's all.
That's right.
Real easy to get, you know, I shouldn't say anymore. He's going to listen to this tape. Can't give it away.
All right, great. Thank you for all the work on this. It's really nice. Good discussion. Next up is village staff report.
Yeah, so staff report, and also kind of our general business 4B item. We're looking to try and pin down, and this is actually in part, partially I'm hoping to have Eric more involved in the work of this committee, at least for, another few weeks. His class schedule means he can only be here on Thursdays. Not that you should structure your work around him. In December and onward, we have more flexibility. But really, this is kind of, we know that there's been scheduling issues the last few months. We're trying, especially in the last couple, months of the year, to find times when it's maximally, we can get the best attendance we can at this group, knowing that, especially in the holidays, your schedules may be changing. So we do have 2 members absent, so I think circulate this via email as well. But we're looking at, again, at least in November, we're looking at potentially Thursday the 10th, Thursday the 17th, perhaps Tuesday the 29th, and then in December, Thursday the 1st, Thursday the 8th, Tuesday the 13th, or keeping, if it's not, coming too close to people's Christmas travels, potentially Tuesday the 20th. Again, we'll write these dates out, but if there's general feedback now, that would be helpful. Again, really just trying to get 1 or 2 dates. I think 2, we can find enough to do for 2 between now and the end of the year.
Okay.
And a bit of work planning too. So at your next meeting, we plan to come back to Dark Sky. We plan to do some work with that. We know, around that end of December, so probably your January meeting.
Yeah, we'll
will
do
be
the leaf blower, the
blowers.
first leaf blower discussions.
Great.
And then we will, we'll see how fast we can pull together some more bicycle planning work and bring it back to you too. So
Great.
that would conclude my report.
Okay, member report. Would the members like to discuss any issues, items they found?
I was just gonna share, I was looking for the details, but I can't find it quickly. But there was, in Lake Forest, there was a board meeting last night. And as you all may recall, Lake Forest Garden Club made a donation, I think in 2020, for their Rethink Recycling campaign. And at that time, their recycling was experiencing a 25% contamination rate. And so the goal was to get to 10%, and they accomplished it. They got it done in 2 years, and they're at 9.8% right now. And they won some award, but I don't know the detail. I can't remember like the agency and whatever that presented the award, but it was the only program, I think, in Illinois that was recognized.
That's correct, yeah. So ICMA is the International City and County Manager Association. It's my professional association, the village administrators. So they do I think they give out, it's like 15 or 20 program awards a year. They're different categories and then tiered based on size. So Lake Forest won the sustainability award for this particular year. In any given year, Illinois usually brings back 2 or 3 of those awards probably. So it's pretty remarkable. Again, it's a neat program. Marcus Norman designed, did a lot of the graphic work. Their staff very diligent in implementing it. And again, you can't understate. I think the Lake Forest Garden Club gave somewhere in the order of 100,
It was
120,000.
110,
Yeah.
110,000.
Too small, too big. Yeah, I mean, a pretty substantial commitment of resources to that. So it pays off.
But it's exciting, and there may be lessons learned or ways that Lake Bluff can benefit from that as well.
Yeah, no, I've got some of those materials on my desk actually from Vitigo. They had some hang tag work. They've been very good about keeping that in their newsletter, and so definitely good lessons to learn and trying to figure out how we can scale some of that to.
Yeah,
our
I didn't know,
situation too.
they implement these oops tags, so they have had interns, I think, that will see what's in your bin, and if you're putting stuff that is not recyclable, you get a little tag that just says oops, and they tell you what it is, so you learn what you shouldn't have in there. Anyway, so there's a bunch, you need to have an intern though. I think a lot of the work was done through interns, but,
Once in a while, we do get Swalco to come through and do, probably once a year, once every other year, yeah, they'll follow the
Do
truck
we
and do
know
the audit.
what is our contamination rate?
I don't know off the top of my head, but we can
Be
find that out
interesting.
for you.
See. But they said it's saving Lake Forest $50,000 a year.
Not nothing.
That's not
Yeah.
nothing.
No, that's not nothing.
No, because then in 2 years, they'd basically
pays
have
for itself.
saved,
Yeah.
paid the grant.
Well, speaking of which, I attended a sustainable green meeting at the Chicago Botanical Gardens with Susan, I'm sorry, with Bob, now I'm dropping names, Bob Morgan,
Great.
and Julie Morrison, and green representatives from several communities to talk about what's been going on in their communities. Lake Forest was there, and we had a discussion about waste and some of the innovative things that Lake Bluff has done, because we're really leading the North Shore in a lot of those things. They still don't know how to implement a food scrapping program, because they'd have to bring in
Who's they?
Lake Forest.
Oh, got it. Mhm.
Because they'd have to bring in an outside food scrapping company to do that, and that costs money. They still are using their own public works garbage collection, which is something Lake Bluff got away from many years ago, saving us $300,000 a year in costs, and allowing us to use Groot for our
I always loved
recycling.
having our Lake Bluff garbage guys, though.
I know,
I'm glad it saves us money, but
but I was on the board when
Miss
that.
those little
I was on-
Cushman. Remember those little
Yeah.
Cushman? Yeah.
it was always the nicest guys, too. Whoever did the hiring, they were so nice.
They all got jobs at Groot, plus benefits and retirement. Yes.
Okay, that's
No,
really
I-
good to hear.
No, I was on the Lake Bluff board.
It's really
We
good to
took
hear.
we took care of our staff. Nobody lost anything. They got equivalent salaries and
That's awesome.
all their pension.
Oh, that's really nice to hear.
Group bought our trucks, bought all of our equipment.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah,
You make
nobody
me feel
nobody
better.
got nobody
I was
got
a little
hurt.
wistful that we got rid of them.
It was a very good deal. Groot did well with us. Plus, then we also switched over more and more to compressed natural gas instead of diesel for the trucks. Anyway, so it was a good discussion. Obviously, Highland Park is doing a lot of great things
They're amazing.
with their work. And I discussed, the things for Lake Bluff we're doing. There was a lot of interest in our lighting ordinance. Highland Park does have some lighting rules. They don't apply to residential, but they do apply to commercial areas. So that was a good discussion. And what else came out of that meeting? I think it was just good to hear how all the different communities are approaching different things. So it's good.
I received a letter from the conservation chair at the Town and Country Garden Club in Libertyville letting me know, and I'm sharing here with you now, that there's a Green Living Fair in 2023 at the College of Lake County in Grace Lake. And I have a flyer here. It's on Saturday, March 16th, 10 to 2, Libertyville Civic Center. And it just sounds exciting. Learn what you can do to live a more green, conscious life. They're welcoming exhibitors, and they reached out to me because of the Lake Bluff Garden Club. There are other garden clubs getting involved in a bigger picture beyond gardening to how gardening relates to green living. So they're looking for exhibitors. They have 4 speaker forums, 4 workshops. They have recycling opportunities. So if you want to bring your shoes, your cell phones, your wine corks, you can take that there. So, of course, they've got something on Facebook, but the date is March 16th, 10 to 2, Libertyville Civic Center, Green Living Fair.
Thank you.
Yep.
That was also a thing that they liked was our e-waste. Lake Bluff has a pretty good e-waste program.
How do we do that? I have a bag of e-waste.
Put it out at your curb.
What is e-waste?
Your phones, your TVs, your stereos.
Oh,
your-
my gosh.
Cords.
How about remotes,
cords
TV
and
remotes,
remotes?
yes.
Oh,
So,
jeez.
wait,
Plus-
so Brian, how do I put that on my curb? Like on Thursdays?
Yeah, so you do, in our new contract, you do have to call ahead. It's free. I mean, you just need
You
to
just
give them
call
a
Root?
day in advance, yeah, and they'll tell you what to do. Or if you just want to drop it off, you can come to the Public Works Center.
Yeah, the
There's a
Public
whole-
Works has the e-waste.
They
bin.
do?
Yes.
Okay, my
And that big
husband always
garage
goes, I
at
was
the
asking.
south end, right?
Yeah, it's it's next to the
Batteries and
garage.
light bulbs, I'm compiling. 'cause
Batteries
my
you can just
husband-
throw away these days, right?
Yeah, alkaline, you can just.
Throw 'em in
put
the
trash,
garbage.
Yeah.
They've changed the makeup so they're not as toxic as they
Like
used
my
to
little
be.
Duracells, I could just throw in the garbage?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I can mentally do that.
I cannot mentally do that. I have
But you're supposed to
containers
do
of them
now,
everywhere.
You know?
I can't,
I
I'm
went
not ready yet.
rechargeable.
Yeah,
I haven't thrown one out in
I've
a
switched to
while.
rechargeables as well. Just makes more sense.
Is the technology's better? Because before they just didn't keep a charge.
No, well, it depends. You have to get the right battery, and I should say on a public forum, but.
You
Antelope-
found one that you
Antelope-
like?
Antelope.
Antelope.
ENLOOP. They last 10 years. They'll retain 70% of their charge, still within 10 years, and get a good charger, a really good charger.
All right, good.
I
to
use
know.
just regular old Energizers. And
Well,
they work-
Energizers are good.
They work fine for me.
Does Public Works also take light bulbs? Thank you. I'm just getting to ask all my questions instead of bugging me at home.
my
This is
jackets?
Very helpful. What about light bulbs? No, I'm serious.
You can take your hearing aids to the Green Living Fair.
I'll bring all of them.
And now you can buy your hearing aids at Walgreens.
I think you can.
I love that.
Yeah.
That seems like a great thing.
You could do like incandescent bulbs there. You can't do fluorescents. We can't process the
You
mercury.
can
in
take your
those.
Christmas tree lights here.
Yeah, but Swalco also has by appointment now. I saw you can pay.
No, because I thought
To bring-
Swalco was just like shut, like not accepting anything for a while.
Well, they'll, latex paints, now they will take for like $1 a gallon. You can make an appointment to drop them off. So various chemicals.
Yeah, their facility was closed for quite some time. I think due to COVID operational reasons. I think they only really started doing it by appointment again this spring,
I
maybe.
thought there was something beyond COVID why they were closed. I don't remember.
Okay,
Okey dokey.
can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very kindly.
Great meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.